I'm Dr. Michael Langoni, Executive Director of International Celtic Studies Association. I'm pleased to introduce Dr. Eva Meyrat, who is a second-generation adult whose father was a tenured professor of philosophy at the University of Texas at Austin. Her mother was a devotee of an Eastern cult that practiced a branch of Hinduism called Advaita Vedanta, a non-dualistic philosophy that teaches that the self is one with the ultimate truth or reality. Half of Eva's childhood was spent in an ashram in India, where she and the other children were unsupervised much of the day. Despite the upheavals and instability that characterized her childhood, Eva managed to get out of the cult at the age of 16 and eventually earned her MD from the University of Texas Medical Branch in Galveston. Dr. Meyrat has a busy family practice, and she lives near Dallas with her 3 small children.
Thank you for that introduction, Michael. So the presentation, Truth from the Mouths of Babes, it's about the unique challenges that I have faced as an SGA, as a second-generation adult, raising my own kids. Our childhoods were far from normal, way out of the ordinary, and there's issues that come up. We don't have any models or examples to build from. So, like so many things for us second generations, we end up starting from scratch when it comes to raising kids and just trying to figure it out. So I'm gonna address some of the issues that I've faced as I'm raising my own kids. Here's a bio, and I'm going to skip this because I think Michael did a good job of introducing me, and there's nothing on here that he didn't tell you. Okay, so I'm going to start with a story that I wrote about taking my kids to an amusement park in France that I had been to myself as a child in the cult. And this is Asterix. I don't know how many of you are familiar with the French comic Asterix and Obelix. But I took my kids to Parc Asterix, which is just north of Paris. And I wrote the story. Actually, I wrote the story at the ICSA conference in Washington, D.C. When I was in one of the sessions. I just started getting ideas and jotting stuff down, and then went upstairs to my room and finished it. And I published the story in my blog called Advaita Realized. And I'm going to be reading the story off my iPhone. In the summer of 2013, I took a trip with my husband's family to Paris. We were going to attend the marriage of my husband's older brother. Many friends and relatives were coming from all over France, America, and Europe. It was going to be a big family reunion, and we wouldn't have missed it for the world. My kids were especially excited because my oldest son was to be the ring bearer, and my daughter the flower girl. We spent about a week in Paris before the wedding. There are a million things to do and see in Paris, and I would have loved to do all of them, but I had to stick to things that would interest my kids. My big boy, Olivier, all names are in pseudonyms, was 8 years old. Colette, my little princess, was 5 years old. And my sweet baby boy, Antoine, was 3. These kids are so precious to me. They're my life, my love, my everything. But at this young age, they seriously limited my museum and monument viewing. I thought it'd be more fun to take them to one of the amusement parks right outside of Paris. That's Euro Disney or Parc Asterix. My prior experiences with these 2 parks were as a child in the South Indian Hindu cult that followed Gurudev. Our cult took trips abroad every few years for the purpose of recruitment. During the early years of the group, London, England, and Austin, Texas were the preferred destinations. I went to England twice when I was quite small. We did some sightseeing during those early trips, but the later recruitment trips were consumed almost entirely with spiritual work. I remember visiting English castles in Stratford-upon-Avon, which is the birthplace of Shakespeare, when I was a little girl no more than 4 years old. My second trip to England around the age of 8 involved little sightseeing. The kids spent all day in the servants' quarters of a large mansion occupied by the guru and his family. Our parents' time was consumed in talks with the guru, and we kids spent all day watching TV. At the end of our 2-week trip, the picture on the TV started to flicker and falter, and eventually on the last day, it died for good. I was convinced that we had broken the TV by watching it for more than 12 hours a day. As I got older, the cult began traveling to France instead of England because France proved to be a more fertile recruiting ground. After the birth of the Guru's grandson, it was important to find ways to keep him entertained during the trips. That's how the disciples became interested in French amusement parks. Because I was not one of the grandson's favorites, I was not required to go on these trips, and I never went to Euro Disney. I heard about it from my friends who did go, and that was enough to convince me that I wasn't interested. The alternative was to just hang around the Guru's mansion, but that wasn't much fun either. At the mansion, I could participate in the adult spiritual work or try to find a way to amuse myself alone. It got pretty boring. That's why when the grandson's attendants were rounding up people to go to Parc Asterix, I decided to go, even though I knew that my enjoyment was not the purpose of the trip. So I liked having the opportunity to revisit Parc Asterix as an adult with my own kids. I wanted to see how the experience would be different from the first time when I was forced to serve a subordinate role to a spoiled brat. In addition, my French relatives had criticized me, saying that an amusement park wasn't a truly French experience. So I figured that I could make the experience a little more French by going to Parc Asterix rather than Euro Disney. I also look forward to introducing my kids to Asterix, one of my favorite Gallic heroes from the quintessentially French comic Asterix and Obelix. English translation of these comics were found often in Indian airports and hotels, and they were part of the reading repertoire of the cult kids. I'd grown to love the comic antics of Asterix and his goofball sidekick Obelix as they battled the Romans and resisted defeat during the heyday of the Roman Empire. The commute to the park presented challenges of its own. We took public transportation and were accompanied by the bride's nephew, a young adult, probably 19 or 20 years old. My mother was with us too. On the trip to the park, she eagerly chatted up the bride's nephew. She expounded on how thrilled she was to be here in France and how she really enjoyed the opportunity to see this part of Europe. "I've never been to this part of France before," she lied. The lies roll off her tongue so effortlessly, I think that she must believe them herself. But to me, they sound like fingernails on a chalkboard. These lies have caused a tremendous amount of pain in my life, and it's cruel and unusual punishment for me to have to sit and listen to them again. My other option is no more appealing. I could call my mother out on her lies and remind her of all the times she has been here before. In other words, I could pick a fight with her on a crowded subway in front of family and strangers. I could insist that the truth be told, even though I know it would humiliate her and make her mad. It's a hard choice, and I'm faced with it just about every time my mother is around. I usually choose to keep quiet, but it's getting harder for me to do so. As expected, my kids had a blast at Parc Asterix. We went during the middle of the week, and as a result, the lines weren't long for the rides. The weather was perfect. It was warm, but not too warm. It kept threatening to rain, but it never did. I found the overcast sky much nicer than the blazing, unrelenting sun that would have been the alternative. We went on as many rides as we could squeeze in. My kids were too small for a lot of the rides. Of course, my little Antoine knows no fear, and the biggest, scariest roller coasters were the ones that he wanted to go on the most. I told him, "No, Antoine, you're much too big for that ride. That one is for babies. This one over here is for big boys like you." Then I would steer him toward the teacups or the miniature airplane rides. So here's my son on a miniature airplane ride. We stuck with stuff like that since I don't have any babies, and the roller coasters were for babies. This one was for big kids. My kids knew that I had been to the park before when I was a kid, and they had lots of questions for me. "Which rides did you go on, Mommy? Did you go on the teacups? Which ride was your favorite?" asked Olivier. How could I explain to them that my experience of the park as a child was nothing like theirs? When I came to the park as part of a large entourage of about 30 kids and adults, we were with the grandson, and our job was to serve and entertain him. There was no thought given to our happiness. We were not individuals in our own right. We were toys, his toys. We had no other purpose than to keep him happy. We went on rides only when and if he deemed it appropriate. The grandson had chosen some of the kids to go on rides, but for the most part, I was overlooked. Finally, he picked me for a mid-sized roller coaster. I was happy, but only guardedly so. I knew how easily my happiness could be snatched away. As predicted, after I stood in line for at least 45 minutes, and right before I was about to get on the ride, the grandson decided that I couldn't go on the ride after all. No explanation was given. He didn't need to justify his choices. Luckily, I had not invested too much hope in the possibility of going on the ride. I knew better than to allow my hopes to be so bitterly dashed. I'd become comfortably, yet uncomfortably, numb. Now I tried to explain to my kids, "Well, I really didn't go on too many rides. I was with a large group of people, and they wouldn't let me." The kids looked confused. "Was it a school field trip?" asked Olivier. Did you have a mean teacher? Colette persisted. Well, not exactly, sweetie, I fumbled. Look, I said, trying to change the subject. I think I remember that ride. I spotted the ride that I had stood in line for but didn't go on. Moved by nostalgia, I said to the kids, hey, let's check that one out. We bounded up hopefully, but I soon realized that it would be too scary for my little kids. On second thought, I said, I remember this one. It wasn't fun at all. Let's go find a better one. I hate lies. My mother's lies are so hurtful. I've vowed to raise my kids differently. I want my kids to know the truth, but how on earth could I tell them? How could I possibly explain to them that their dearly beloved mommy was raised in a cult in which my needs were routinely ignored? My childhood was so different from theirs. It's hard for me to feel anything other than a dissociated numbness when it comes to my childhood. If anything could move me out of this catatonic state, it would be the sadness of my children when they learn what I went through. I can't mourn my losses, but the thought that they might almost moves me to tears. I'm not sure if I can stand that kind of vulnerability. They will have to learn the truth someday, but honestly, they aren't ready for the whole truth yet. Their young minds are still too innocent. All they need to know is that the ride wasn't any fun for me. So we turn away from the ride that I waited in line for but hadn't ridden on. Across the walkway, we see an aquatic area with dolphins. The show is going to start in about 5 minutes, and I know this is just the thing for my kids. Let's try this, I say enthusiastically. Okay, here's the dolphins. As predicted, my kids loved it. They were totally impressed with the way the dolphins dived, leaped in the air, and twisted on unison. I love seeing their little faces light up. Did you see that, Mommy? Did you see the dolphin catch the ball in his mouth, shouts Antoine. Oh, yes, baby, that's really amazing. Did you get to see the dolphins, Mommy, asked Olivier. Of course, I say, not understanding at first. No, I mean, when you were a kid and you came here, did you see the dolphins then? Well, no, sweetie, I respond. Maybe they didn't have dolphins back then. I can't remember for sure if they had dolphins back then. Something tells me that they did, but the grandson wasn't interested. If I had noticed the dolphins at that time, I'm sure that I quickly blocked it out, lest I feel the forbidden stirring of a desire to see them. Better to stay oblivious to the park and what it has to offer. Any joy I got out of that trip to Parc Asterix was derived from the opportunity to talk to friends when their attention wasn't immediately required by our little despot. As the ride started closing down at Parc Asterix, we made our way to the exit. On the way out, I got ice cream for the kids. They were so cute trying to say chocolate, strawberry, and vanilla in French. After the ice cream shop, I stopped by the gift shop, strategically located by the park exit, and got Gallic warrior outfits for all of them. Swords, helmets, shields, and a bottle for magic potion. By now, they all knew the story of how the tiny Gallic village resisted the Romans with the help of the druid's magic potion. I watched them bang around with their swords. The park employees were dressed as Roman centurions, and I loved watching the kids stage mock fights with them. Mommy, did you get a Gallic warrior outfit when you were here before? Did you get ice cream, the kids persist? By now, I would think that they should know the answer. No, my sweet babies, I sighed. I'm afraid when I was here before, having fun wasn't the main point. Why not, Mommy, asked Colette. She's confused. Well, I was with a large group, I tried to explain. But it wasn't exactly a mean teacher. Actually, it was another kid. Was he a bully? Asked Antoine. He's trying to make sense of this. I want to take the bully in the wiener, he says. I can definitely relate to the sentiment, but I feel the need to temper it a little. No, sweetie, I say, that isn't the right thing to do. If a bully is picking on you, you should tell your parents or a teacher. So why didn't you do that, says Olivier? Why didn't you tell your teacher? You must have had a really mean teacher. Colette is back to the teacher theory. In a way, that isn't totally off. You could think of Gurudev as the mean teacher, and his grandson as the bully who inexplicably was allowed to get away with murder. I decided to go along with that for the time being. The kids will learn about the evil of cults and their leaders in the years to come, but not yet. Yes, babies, my mother had a really mean teacher, and he was mean to me too. He let the bully do whatever he wanted. There weren't any grown-ups who would listen or help. But don't worry, if a bully is mean to you, I will always be here to help. I want to hear about it, and I will do everything I can do to help you. If only someone had said those words to me as a child. It doesn't sound like you had much fun the first time you were here, Mommy, observed Olivier. He's hit the nail on the head. Truth comes out of the mouths of babes who are honest and innocent. No, I didn't have fun, I confess. I'm having a lot more fun today with you. Let's focus on that. I'm so glad I got to come here again with you. I love you, my sweet babies. that's the end of my story. I got a few more pictures here. Thank you. Okay, yeah, here is my little Gallic army. They were so cute. Ready to kick the bully in the wiener for me. I'm so grateful that I have them because we all need a little Gallic army. And okay, and then I became a Gallic warrior too on the ride of the metro from the park because, of course, the kids got tired of wearing their uniform, their outfits, and gave everything to me. And since I only have two hands, the hat had to go on my head. Okay, so I'm going to just talk about some of the issues that come up now when you're an SGA parent and trying to figure out how to raise your own kids. And I think the story really does a good job of illustrating one of the main issues that I have, and that is, how the heck am I supposed to explain this to my kids? I mean, this is weird. Even most grown-ups can't understand this stuff. And how in the world am I supposed to explain this? Lying is not an option for me. I've heard way too many lies during my life, and those are really hurtful. And, the kids know that I'm different. It's obvious. I mean, Indian culture is so much a part of who I am. It's undeniable. I mean, the food, the dress, the language, the jewelry, all of it, and they notice and they want to know why. And so I want them to know who I am. I don't want to hide my real identity from my kids. I mean, these are my kids. I love my kids, and I want to be real with them. So trying to figure out how to have an honest, open relationship and yet not give them more than they can handle. So this is what I tell them about how I ended up in India. I say, when I was a baby, a man from India tricked Amma. Amma is what they call my mother. He tricked her into believing that he was God. And as a result, Amma made a lot of really bad choices. And we ended up spending a lot of time in South India. And they seem to be able to get that for the most part. So here's Satya Sai Baba. I don't know if you guys know Satya Sai Baba. He is not my cult leader. He was kind of a rival South Indian cult. But I used him to help explain to the kids what happened. He's useful for a couple reasons. One of them is that he has a pretty large internet presence, so I can Google him up and find pictures and videos about him. Another one is that his brand of deceit was particularly concrete and obvious, because what he did is he would manifest little figurines of Krishna and stuff like that. And it was just sleight of hand. I mean, it was just like a common magician's trick. And then he would convince people that he had done that because he was God and he had special powers. But I can find videos of him doing that online and show it to my kids and say, look, he's just doing a common magic trick. And they know about magicians and stuff like that. And yet he's got all these people fooled. This is how somebody can trick other people into thinking that he's God. And I say, ours didn't do exactly the same kind of magic trick, but he had other ways of tricking people. And that's what Amma's guru did. Okay, so here's another thing. So how many parents do you think have to deal with this question? Mommy, what is a cult? But that's one that I've had to explain quite a few times because the kids hear the word and they want to know what it is. They know that I'm at the International Cultic Studies Association. They also know that I'm here talking about my childhood. They see me read books about cults. They hear the word because I say it when I'm talking to my friends. So I have to figure out how to explain to the kids what a cult is, and that's not easy because even some grown-ups have trouble with that. In fact, probably most grown-ups. So this is what I told the kids. A cult is a group of people who are tricked by someone, like my mother was, into believing that he is God or has special powers. The people work hard for the bad man or woman and give him everything they have because they believe him. In the end, the only person who gets anything out of it is the bad man. He's just using them for power and money. And they end up with nothing because they give him everything and get nothing back. It's all a big lie, a big trick. And that seems to have worked for the most part. They seem okay with that explanation.
Very concise.
Okay, so here's another challenge I have. Yesterday I was talking about what is family when you're an SGA. That's complicated. And I don't have a relationship with my mother right now, and I don't think I ever will in the future. Well, at the time I wrote the story, I was still talking to her. That was a few years ago, and I haven't talked to her in over a year now. So I have to try to explain to the kids why I can't talk to my mother. And it's complicated by the fact that she is an evil, deceitful, manipulative narcissist. And I don't know if you guys have seen the movie Tangled. That's my favorite movie of all times. It's an awesome movie. But what's awesome was a lot of great things about it. But one of the awesome things about it is that they did an excellent job of portraying the narcissistic mother. I mean, this is amazing. There must have been some psychologists in there somewhere explaining what it's like. Because I'll tell you what, this is my mom right here, okay? This crazy, manipulative narcissist. And so because she's deceitful and evil, since I got divorced, I've been separated from my husband for a year, and we've been divorced since April. But when I separated from him, she and him became best buddies. Because they didn't even like each other before we got divorced, okay? So there's no other reason than to get under my skin and make me mad. But so now when the kids are visiting my ex, she comes over and she's there with the kids. So it would be a lot easier for me if I could, I cut my mother out of my life. It would be a lot easier if I could also cut them out of their lives. But I can't because my ex still has visitation rights, and it's not illegal for her to be over there at his house when they're there. So they're still interacting with her, and I have to explain why I'm not. So this is what I told the kids. I told the kids, I can't love Amma because she has done in the past, and she continues to do now, things to me that are hurtful and bad. She's very bad for me. And I say, I can't have that. I don't have room for that in my life. I don't deserve that. I don't need that. So I'm not going to have it in my life. But then I say, and I understand that she treats you differently. And if she's treating you differently, it's okay for you to love Amma. And it's okay for you to have a relationship with Amma, even though I don't. And I don't love her. And I think this is good because it explains why I can't have a relationship with my mother. And it explains, I think it's important for me to show the kids that I'm not going to have somebody in my life who treats me badly and abuses me. I think that's really important for them to see me draw that boundary and protect myself. On the other hand, I know that they have to form their own opinions about their grandmother. So I'm trying to give them the space in the room to have a relationship with her and love her. And then, they're going to form their own opinions. And she may be, I don't know, maybe she'll be a great grandmother, a wonderful grandmother. Probably not, but they need to figure it out for themselves. So I just give them some room there. Okay, so here's another really tough thing, religion. Okay, so how am I supposed to teach the kids what to believe when I don't even know what I believe myself? And I think we all know that, the cult robbed you of your religion. And, I'm figuring it out. I don't know what I believe, and I would like to teach something to my kids, but I'm not sure what. For me, one thing is for sure. I think this is a hard question, and every SGA parent is going to answer this differently because obviously we're all going to arrive at different conclusions of what we believe. But for me, I'm sure that I'm not an atheist, which is actually, I think that's a little different for an SGA. A lot of us are atheists, and that makes a lot of sense, really, when you think that since our infancy, we were all horribly abused in the name of God. It makes a lot of sense that you're just going to reject God and say, okay, I'm done with that. But I do give my dad credit for introducing me to a different side of religion. He was a professor of philosophy at UT Austin, and his particular branch was on medieval philosophy and proof of the existence of God. And so he spent his whole life basically talking about how you can prove or how you can't prove the existence of God, talking about proofs of the existence of God, and talking about the uneasy marriage of faith and reason. How can you have both of these things at the same time, you know? Okay, so you know what? I'm going to skip this slide because it's got a lot of words. It's a quote from one of my dad's books, but he's really kind of hard to follow and wordy and everything. So we're just going to skip that because this one sums it up a lot better. So kind of what I got from my dad is that I know that as a finite human being, I can't understand the infinite. Atheism would be as arrogant as a fanatical insistence on knowledge of God. I've chosen faith over non-faith because for me that represents a path of hope over despair. So, I think you have to accept the fact that we can neither prove nor disprove the existence of God. And if you have faith in your life, you have to accept that that's a gift. And it's not something that I can reason through, but it's a choice you make. And if you have faith, you have hope. You have hope that there's maybe a God out there, maybe something else beyond just this world. So anyway, that's kind of where I am with that. So beyond that, I'm not real sure. So I believe in God, but don't have a religion. So for better or for worse, the kids are being raised Catholic, and that's really because my ex-husband is Catholic. And I know there's probably a lot of people out there who aren't going to be crazy about that. I know a lot of people think that Catholics, Catholicism is like a cult, and certainly there are branches of Catholicism that are a cult. But that's, I wanted, honestly, when I had the kids, I wanted to get into a church of some sort. I didn't know what to choose. I had zero experience with Christianity. We just went with Catholicism because it was my ex-husband's church, and then he is still doing that. So sometimes, I think some of what they get from the Catholic Church is okay, and then of course some of it is not. And I just kind of try to temper it a little bit. If my kids get a little too concerned about following all the things that they're supposed to do, like, meatless Fridays and confession and all this kind of stuff, what I tell them, and I don't know what my ex is telling them. My ex is probably telling them the opposite of what I'm telling them, but this is what I tell them. I say, look, all of us here, and the priest and the Pope included, okay, so this is like a really non-Catholic point of view. The priest and the Pope included, we're all just people. And we don't know what God wants. So at the church, you hear that you need to confess and you need to do all these other things. But what I think you need to do is just look in your heart and let your heart be your guide. And that's the best you can do to listening to God. If somebody else tells you that they have a better idea of what God wants from you, they're wrong. Because nobody here is any closer to God than you are. So just listen to your own heart. If you think you need to confess, then do it. If you don't, then don't. So that's what I do. And yeah, so
I think your microphone is going to.
You might push the button,
the button,
an on-off switch.
push it. Is that? No, that's not better. I think it's the battery.
Your voice is very clear anyway, so
You can
Yes,
hear me?
you can hear you.
I
Okay.
can use it.
All right, I guess I can put that down then. All right, so I did go through the Catholic rite of initiation of adults, but I didn't become Catholic, and I wasn't comfortable becoming a member of a religion. I think for obvious reasons when you're raised in a cult. But I think what I did get out of it is that I liked Jesus. I mean, and that was news because, you know, I was raised Hindu, and Christians and Jesus were really demonized, and so I was not interested in Jesus at all before I did that. And then, you know, after those classes, I did kind of say, well, you know, he actually seems like a really good guy, and so I do like him. So I'd say I'm probably a Christian of some sort. I'm definitely not a Hindu, but you know, beyond that, I really don't know what I am. I'm just me. Okay. All right, relationships. Oh my God, this one is hard. I don't know how to do relationships. I've never seen that mirrored, or I've never seen that as an example of that. My parents had a horrible relationship. I can't remember a time when they actually got along with each other. And then, obviously, in the cult, all the relationships were horrible. And and all of my own relationships have been with abusers because I don't know how to find somebody who doesn't abuse me. And my relationship to their dad was bad. He was another abuser. And I didn't realize when I got into it, I didn't realize that I deserved better and that I needed somebody who treated me better. And I knew that he was bad for me for a long time before I got out. And what really kind of got me out, finally, was I had to come around to the realization that not only was he bad for me, but he was also bad for the kids. And the best thing that I could do for the kids was divorce him and then do my best to protect both myself and the kids from my ex-husband. So really motivated by my concern for them. But then, okay, so, I've done a pretty good job of getting him out, but then, trying to find a new relationship. I do want to be in a relationship because the goal of parenting is to raise children to be independent adults. So that means they're going to grow up, and then they're going to go off and have their own relationships, and I'll be alone. So I want to have my own relationship, but it's really hard because, like the slide shows, I'm attracted to abusers like a fly to a four-letter word, and I'm trying to figure out how to break that pattern, and it's not easy. But the stakes are high because it's not just me anymore. It's my kids. And I cannot do this anymore. I cannot have these relationships anymore. I mean, I just cannot tolerate the abuse because if I bring an abuser into my life, I'm bringing it into their lives too. So now, it's just like we're not playing anymore. This is for real, And so it's hard. And this is what it feels like to me. So this is me at the age of 18 when I was dating, and I really, really needed a parent to give me some guidance and to help me figure it out, and I didn't have that. So I left the cult when I was 16. When I was in the cult, we weren't allowed to talk to boys at all, so any dating or relationship with boys was just off limits. We couldn't do it. And then I left when I was 16 and came back to America and moved in with my dad. And my dad was not a parent. I got a driver's license first thing I did when I got back to America, so I had total freedom. And when I was 16 years old, I could go out all night, not come home, and he didn't care where I was or what I was doing. So, I was pretty wild. And so now, at the age of 41, back in the dating field, I'm in a situation where I'm trying to parent my inner teen. And at this point, I have to set the boundaries for myself, because this girl, she likes really bad guys, okay? And so I have to say, look, I know you think he's great and he totally turns you on and you love hanging out with him, but you know what? He drinks too much and he doesn't respect you, and we're not having that. So no, you can't go out with him. Or no, you may not spend the night at his house. You must be home by 10. That's what I expect. So these are the things that I'm telling myself now. And it's hard, and I just hope that, my own kids, when they get to be teenagers, are a little easier to parent than this kid, because I'm having a hard time working my way through it. This is the challenge here. Okay, so last but not least, there's a question of discipline. So in the cult, everybody's experience of discipline is different when they're in the cult. In my cult, the kids really weren't disciplined. We were kind of like free-range kids, and for the most part, nobody really cared what we did. We weren't being educated, and nobody cared how we treated each other. The only thing that really mattered was that we did all the things that were necessary to worship the guru, all the spiritual stuff we were supposed to do. And beyond that, it really didn't matter. And then, of course, what confuses this is that when I was 10 years old is when the guru's grandson was born. And so when his grandson was born, the guru wanted us to just really wait on him hand and foot and do everything that he wanted. So we were taught, when I was 10 years old, we were taught a way to raise children which is completely messed up. And what we were taught was that we could never say no to his grandson. And that's, you're talking about not saying no to a 1-year-old, 2-year-old. That's crazy, These, at that age, they have a death wish. If you let them do what they want, they're gonna kill themselves and everybody else. But at 2 years old, if he decided he wanted to drive the car, we had to let him. And obviously, I have to find a different way to deal with my kids. I have to be able to set boundaries in a responsible way. So this is me when I was 13, and this is a little baby who I used to take care of. So at this age, I wasn't in school. I was homeschooling. Theoretically, I was homeschooling. Actually, I wasn't doing any schoolwork. When I was in America, when I was in India, I was just doing the cult stuff. When I was in America, I was staying with another cult member during the day, and instead of doing schoolwork, I was taking care of her little 1-year-old baby, who I really do adore and love this little kid. Now he's a very, very big guy, and I still adore him. But anyway, so when I wasn't playing with this little guy, I was reading Parents Magazine, which was probably about as good as education as I could have gotten at that point. It's probably what I needed more than anything else. Because, interestingly, this woman, she was a cult member, so, really she shouldn't have been reading Parents Magazine. She should have just followed the guru's advice on child raising. But she did have a whole huge stash of Parents Magazine. And man, I just devoured those things. And I loved them. Because they were just so sensible and reasonable. They taught you how to put limits on a child's behavior in a loving way. And I loved it. And so, honestly, the advice I got out of those magazines, I still use it today. I think that's how I learned how to parent. As odd as that is. But, us SGAs, we just pick up information wherever, That's how I did it. Okay. And then this one is from my little guy. And he's just like, come on, God doesn't live in India. Yeah, I know. Seems obvious, but not to everybody. Obviously, there's a lot of folks who somehow get the illusion that he does. So that's it. Any questions, anybody?
brought you to the realization that you should leave the cult when you were 16?
Yeah, so I left when I was 16, and at that age, I had not yet decided or realized that the guru and the cult were wrong. I still thought they were right. But it was horribly abusive and very misogynist, and I wasn't in school. One thing is I definitely wanted to go to school. If I stayed there, I wouldn't have even graduated from high school, which I could not fathom. So that was a big thing, just that I wasn't going to graduate from high school, so I wanted to leave and go to school. But also it was abusive, and I hated it. And so I decided that I was going to leave. And even though I thought that they were right, I was like, you know what? I was so fed up with it. I was just like, I don't care. You know, if I'm the devil incarnate, I'm just going to go with that because I can't take it anymore. And if this is heaven, I'm just going to go ahead and try hell. And so that's why I left when I was 16. Any other questions? Yeah,
did you talk to other family members as you were sort of going through your journey? I mean, did you share with others that you felt you could open up to and talk to?
There was nobody I could open up to. Mm-hmm. Nobody at all. I wish I could have. From my cult, there's just a few. I mean, I could count on one hand how many people I can actually talk to about this stuff. And then, as I was a young adult until about 5 years ago when I found, my support group in Dallas and then ICSA, I tried to talk to other people and nobody got it. And so not until I became a part of this organization could I really talk to people. Yeah.
Were you ever triggered when your kids got to certain ages where you were,
Yes.
particularly abused or anything, and how did you handle that?
That's happened. I've had some really nasty flashbacks when they get to an age, kind of a perfect storm of, my daughter was at the age that some bad stuff happened to me, and then some other stuff happened at the same time and triggered me and really messed me up for a while. I mean, you get in therapy. I mean, the way you deal with all your triggers, you get in therapy, you talk to your support group, your support people, and you work through it, and try not to let it interfere with the way you're parenting your child, because it's not their fault, obviously. Yeah. Anything else?
How do you have a problem balancing out letting your children grow up and being afraid that they're going to be hurt in some kind of way also? Because you are so hurt, you don't want your kids to be abused and hurt. Do you struggle with that?
Yeah, I do. I do struggle with that. And I worry about them, being with my mom and my ex. That's when I really worry about them, is when there was my ex and my mom is over there, and he's done things that are abusive, and it's hard. You're not supposed to, when you're in a when you're divorcing in a co-parenting situation, you're not supposed to ask the kids too many questions about what happened at the other parent's house. But at the same time, if something bad happened, you want to hear about it. So it's hard, you try to talk to them about abuse and let them know that if something happens, they can tell you, but they're not going to tell you everything. And I don't know, it's one of those things that as a parent, you can't control everything, and it's sad because you want to protect them, but unfortunately you have to sort of come to the realization that bad stuff will happen, and all you can do is your best, Anyone else? Yeah.
Have you found any books on dealing with narcissists and explaining to kids, or dealing with? Have you read any books on anything close to this topic? Is there books out there?
I haven't read anything on it. No, I mean I'm just kind of winging it.
We talk about that a lot.
I haven't seen anything on that. Just figuring it out. Yeah. What is it?
There's a book, which I'm sure a lot of people here read, by Dr. Joshua Coleman, When Parents Hurt, which is about estrangements.
Okay.
And I mean, a cult situation is different and it's the same.
Uh-huh.
And there's a lot to be learned in that book and following Dr. Joshua Coleman.
Okay,
So I really recommend that.
when parents hurt?
When parents are, it's great. It's
Okay,
really
good.
wonderful. And
Yeah.
there's one thing that I struggle with. When my daughter has, she's in a one-on-one and she's cut us off. And when I was growing up, I had issues with my mom. I mean, nothing like this, but our way of dealing with it is when people were so angry, they stopped talking to one another.
Uh-huh.
There were a few times where I didn't speak to my mom.
Uh-huh.
And I wonder if that message is in my daughter's brain somewhere, in her mind, and where she feels, well, I'm mad at my mom. I mean, why she's mad is because of what her cult leader is giving her, but it's okay to cut me off, to cut my husband off. So I think there's a balance that everyone has to really be careful of. Like you say, I don't speak to my mom. Like, is it okay to give that message to your children, or is it not? I don't have the answer.
Yeah.
I'm just throwing it out.
Well, I think it's going to be an individual question. In my situation, definitely it's the right choice because my mom is not going to stop abusing me. So since she's not going to stop, I've got to leave.
That's healthy.
Yeah, that's healthy. If you have a relationship that is salvageable, where you don't have somebody who always is abusive, then you work it out and you talk. Yeah, I mean, I think that's good if they can see people working things out in a healthy way. I guess you have to do it case by case. Yeah.
I have a comment. It's so encouraging to see you being such a great mom, even,
Guess what? Battery's not on this winter.
just kidding. It's just really encouraging for me, like as an SGA, growing up with no parents like you, to see you doing such an incredible job of parenting and like giving them such great answers that help them to figure it out by themselves, but still give them direction. Like,
Yeah.
it's very inspirational for me. Like, it gives me hope that maybe I can do a decent job and not totally screw up my kids.
Thank you.
It's definitely awesome.
So I'm also a parent who grew up in messed up situations and all of that. And I have
Could you speak a little louder?
Sure. I have a 9-year-old, and we have been out for 7 years. Do you ever find yourself, and I'm sure you have, where you realize you've crossed the line? Like, I've said too much, that this isn't developmentally appropriate. In my anger or my frustration, or I have an ex-husband who, my daughter hasn't seen his mother, thank God, I have a protective order against her, in 7 years. He has a book filled with pictures of her holding her as a baby that he shows her every night when she stays with him. And like, all the rage comes out, and I know there are times where I've said too much, or I've expressed my anger too much, and it's not her load to carry.
Right, yeah.
How do you pull back and recover from that? How do you know where that line is? Do you have any advice? Is I guess what I'm hoping for.
That is hard, and I have a hard time talking to the kids about their dad. I'm not, like, I haven't really ever totally blown up about something. Although maybe sometimes I might give them information that's just above their heads. That's maybe the worst I've done. I mean, if you do blow up and get angry, I don't know. I mean, I think you have to give them room to love your parent, the ex-parent, even though you don't.
I'm not saying it's anger, it's like, you know that you can't control it, and I'll just start crying in front of my child.
Oh, yeah, that kind of thing, yeah.
So, well, I'm a parent. I have a 14-year-old and a 17-year-old. My wife and I met in the cult that we were in, that we got into as adults, and we left together. and we're divorcing now 20 years later. And so I've done every wrong thing.
Yeah.
More than once, more than 10 times probably. And I've cried and I've yelled, I've done all those things. So I have and you will, every parent will do a wrong thing. Not every parent will allow themselves will allow their children to understand, to know that they are fallible. So I think that I have found, at least it seems, that my children appreciate it a lot when I say that I was wrong and that I am really sorry.
Yeah.
And, that I want to try to do better.
That's so
And
true.
that I want to try to do better going forward.
Yeah.
So just
Good.
that acknowledgement tends to help because you will do wrong no matter what.
Right. I think that's a good point.
Even non-adult parents.
Yeah.
To judge ourselves.
Yeah. How are we doing on time? We need to move on. I can't even see.
Your paper is very interesting. I have one question.
Yeah.
You talked about abusive attitude of your mother.
Yeah.
I personally deal academically also with the problem of overprotectiveness in the family. Is it something like overprotectiveness mixed with proselytism?
My mother's abuse?
Your mother abuses
Me.
you.
Yeah. So you're talking about, is she overprotective of me? Or
Yes. Is it something like overprotectiveness?
Well, at this point in my life, she's not overprotective. When I was a teenager, she was.
Are you at risk of being overprotective? Is that the question?
Are you asking me if I might be overprotected? Or
Your mother was overprotective over you.
when I was a teenager, yeah. I don't think it had anything to do with her caring about me, though. I think it was just a way of controlling me. So she was, yeah.
So it is a kind of overprotection, yes.
Yeah, so she was. I mean, now, no, she's not. But in the past, yeah.
Yeah, no, so in groups, teenagers especially have difficulty with hypocrisy. Was
Yeah.
that something you encountered in the group situation and other teenagers?
Absolutely. Yeah, I'd notice it, and it would make me mad, and I would want to say something about it, and it would make me even more mad when people didn't want to listen to it, or didn't want to talk about it, or just said, well, you're not supposed to think about that kind of thing, and that was just like, yeah, that would make me really, really mad. So it was
Did you find other teenagers like yourself having this kind of battle with that?
So most of them were not as vocal about it as me. Like some of them would sympathize a little bit, but then they'd kind of get scared and back off. And I was always kind of I mean, some of them that maybe they had more going on internally than they would express. I'm sure they did. Yeah.
The thing I feel about that is stuffing feelings. I mean,
Right,
you're
yeah,
really
stuffing.
upset for a legitimate reason, but how do you express it in a legitimate way? That's that sounds real difficult.
We weren't supposed to be addressing or
Right.
expressing that when we were in the cult. It wasn't allowed. And I definitely felt like my emotions were being stuffed. And it was just when I got back to America, it was like I exploded. I mean, I was just I was a mess. Yeah.
Well, you obviously had to question your situation to get out of it.
Yeah.
For those of us, and I'm thinking of my situation, my son is not living in a cult, he's affected more by an online cult. Can you share some things that might be useful to question a situation?
Okay, so you're talking about, are we talking about like teenagers in particular, or anybody in a cult too?
Yeah.
How do you get them to question their situation?
Yeah, because you must have been questioning it for quite some time before you had the courage to leave.
Right. I mean, presenting people with logic helps to some extent, although they often will block the thoughts and won't allow themselves to entertain those logical thoughts. I think letting them know that you're there to be a source of support if they ever decide they're going to leave is really one of the best things you can do. And
ultimately,
they're going to have to decide for themselves. But I know that there's help you can get psychologists who know a lot about exit counseling and stuff like that may be able to help you figure out what's the best thing for you to do if you've got somebody who's involved in a cult. I mean, it's hard. You really can't get somebody out of the cult. They have to decide they want it for themselves.
It's just not one way.
Yeah, it happens so many different ways. Any other questions?
Sorry, I missed the beginning, so maybe you said this, but did you know you could leave because you had a place to go with your dad?
Well, yeah, and you know, I'm so grateful for that. I mean, that was an absolute blessing that at least I did have my dad. I mean, he wasn't really much of a father, but it was a roof over my head. And that's more than what most of the other kids in the cult had. So that was huge. And I probably wouldn't have been able to do it if I didn't have at least that. Because, yeah, I mean, you have to, for most of them, there was just nowhere to go. And so I'm very grateful that I had that.
Yeah, I do full-time intervention work, and one of the things that I encounter with parents that have second generation, the motivation of altruism, and those that commit themselves and their children to a group, and then later on find out it's not what they really thought it was, and they feel really bad that they subjected their children to this.
Yeah.
Have you encountered that in things?
Yeah. I've met people like that. Actually, in our local Dallas support group, there's folks who are like that, and I find those people really inspirational because they have humility and you know, they care about their kids who are still in the cult, as opposed to my mom who's completely unapologetic. So it's nice to have somebody around who has that other different attitude.
Yeah. The thing that strikes me about the parents when it happened to them was the naivete that was going on. In other words, caught up in the dream, caught up in the idealism, the negative things get kind of pushed aside and not dealt with because group policy doesn't facilitate that. In fact, it aggressively tends to control those things. And so it's just that when they come to a realization that real harm has been done, oh my goodness, what have I done to my kids?
Tremendous amount of guilt,
Oh yeah.
Right. And I mean, I feel for them. We have some in our local group who are like that. I feel for them, but I also respect their courage to be able to deal with that honestly, because I think that's why my mom can't change, is because she have to face what she put me through, and I don't think she has enough humility to do that. So I have a lot of respect for those parents,
I have a related question. Do you find that the parents are shielded from things that are going on? Because sometimes there's sequestration. They get separated. They're put in different caretakers or whoever, and a lot of the abuse stuff. The parents don't actually really know about a lot of that because they're not exposed to it.
Right. Yeah. No. I think that's true. I don't think the parents know what happened to their kids necessarily, and a few reasons. Partly because the cult has separated them, so they won't know. Part of it is also, I think, denial, because you really don't want to know, because that would change your whole worldview.
But in a lot of cults, parents do know, for example, that their daughters are being raped by the cult leader. They know. They don't want to know. They say they don't know, but they actually know, and I know they know. I know some who knew.
Yeah, absolutely.
Who didn't know.
There are some cases of, in my group we were separated, so there would have been stuff that my folks wouldn't have known about.
Yeah, I think it's
So
both.
it's both.
There's variations in there.
Yeah,
there really
there's
is.
knowing and there's not knowing, and then there's total dissociation. There's both.
Right, yeah.
The other is credibility. When the story is told, will they believe it's even true? Even if it's factual, and it's firsthand and it's their own kids. The validation part of it's a problem, whether they choose to believe it or not.
Yeah, they won't necessarily believe it. Yeah, they'd rather not know, so they'll try really hard to
defend
not
and protect.
Yeah.
I think in some in the group, they still have a sense. It's not like it's complete denial. I've spoken to my friend here about how my mother is still in the group and she has glimpses of, I can see terror in her eyes. When she entertains for a second, I can see it.
Yeah.
So it's not like it's completely gone for some people. It's different. I think it's different in every case.
I'm just going to add quickly, my father's in the grief guilt stage, and
Yeah.
he says now he should have tried to figure out why we were so upset all the time. He said you weren't normal kids,
Yeah.
and I should have figured out why. He actually got out of the group before the rest of the family.
Right.
And he admits to himself now he knew something was going on, you know.
Well, that speaks to the stages that people go through in this. It's very interactive and it's really involved when you think through it, yeah.
It was a great presentation.
Yeah, really.
Thank you.